The Russian Revolution Recap. March 15, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. The bankers own nothing. They have only the ability to abuse paper credit and to contract availability of paper debt notes. The banks and the bankers are the problem, because they take a middleman position and play both ends against the middle, without having any skin in the game. They only appear to have assets, because the assets are on deposit. This game has been dominated by what we shall call fake Jews for the past 800 years. The Synagogue of Satan got into the business of usury and lending on a large scale when the hypocritical European Christian monarchs decided that despite the Bible's prohibition against usury, they wanted the profits from the venal practice of collecting interest and issuing credit. So in a fruitless effort to fool God, and keep their own hands technically clean, the European monarchs forced Jewish merchants to do the dirty work for them. They entrusted, under point of death, their gold and silver for the banks, and the bankers were obliged, under point of death, to turn a profit by loaning the king's gold. Obviously, this was a dangerous and dirty profession from the outset. The Rothschilds are only the most famous practicing agents of the art. The other various families came to have their own specialties, and they all scrambled by all means possible to set up systems by which they could guarantee results and siphon off benefits and profits for themselves. This latter gambit, siphoning off profits, kicked into high gear during the Napoleonic Wars. The Rothschilds discovered how they could use the king's money without the king knowing about it, garner extra profit for themselves, and keep the king happy at the same time. Imagine the situation: the king wants to loan out £1 million of gold and wants the best return possible on the safest investment. So, you look around and find a good safe deal for him that will reliably return 10% in a year. But during that year, you have control of £1 million of gold, so you double sell it, and find a better deal with a shorter return period, say, 15% in 6 months. You loan it for 6 months, collect the 15%, then loan it again for 10% for another 6 months, and pocket the difference without the king knowing a thing about it. You've made yourself 5% of £1 million for nothing but the footwork and accounting. The king is happy. You are happy. Pull enough of these deals and after a while, you can get into the insurance business, which they did. This aims at minimizing the risks for them. They start self-insuring their own losses, and offering this same service to their king, who legalizes insurance, a form of legalized gambling, to further protect his own investments, not caring or realizing that the bankers are actually covering their own illicit use of his funds. After a while, to further guarantee the success of your lending and scamming operations, you make a deal with the king to set up special courts for you, courts where you always win. This is so that the king's debts are always paid, in substance, land, houses, businesses, gold, silver, whatever has actual value, and the bankers never again have to worry about coming up short, should one of their side deals go south. The king likes this arrangement, especially when the bankers introduce the concept of credit and securitization. Under this system, the king doesn't actually loan anything at all, but hot air. No gold or anything of substance changes hands. He underwrites paper credit extended to his loyal subjects, based on the value of the subjects' own assets, which costs the king nothing. Then, if the victims of this scheme fail to pay him or, most importantly from the banker's perspective, the bankers back for this non-loan, he can use his special courts in admiralty to take whatever of substance that the victims may have to pay back the loan of this fictitious value known as credit. To make doubly sure this scheme works, the king self-insures this investment of credit with the bank, and the banks then underwrite all these credit investments with escrow accounts that are also funded with the victim's own assets. This requires at least a 100% rate of usury on every such transaction, but of course, the banks and the king couldn't be content with that. Oh, no, they had to further introduce the concept of fractional reserve banking, which allowed them to loan out the victim's own credit at interest, too. The idea is that the credit bank, also known as a commercial bank, can loan out 7 to 10 times the amount of credit actually funded to the victim, based on the victim's payment of interest over the course of 15 or 30-year term notes, and reap the immediate return on the additional credit extended merely by selling on the debt of victim 1 to victim 2, 3, 4. And meanwhile, the king's gold sits safe and secure in the bank, never at risk, but turning over endless interest accruals from all these investments of credit that cost the king nothing to produce, and which is actually based on the victim's own assets. Nice, no? No wonder that the banks and the governments have waxed fat, and the attorneys of all these special admiralty courts, too, at the expense of all the trusting people who counted on their government to protect their best interests and the best interests of their country, too. It's a criminal racket, and it has been going on since James chapter 1. It has been perpetuated by generations of British monarchs. It has been enjoyed by generations of ethnically Jewish, but religiously satanic bankers, the lost tribes of Israel, who long ago stopped worshipping the Creator and started worshipping the father of all lies, and the attorneys who have functioned as the bill collectors for all the above. So now we get to the actual, factual reason that the British created Palestine and later, Israel, out of thin air, as a haven for their bankers, where they could worship Baal to their heart's content, and have no extradition treaties whatsoever. While many people thought a Jewish homeland was a great idea, including Jews themselves, this is not the reason that Israel was created, and no matter how valiant the Israeli people have been in defending their scrap of ground, that is not why it endures to this day. Israel endures and is paid $1 million per hour for existing so that it can act as crime central for the international bankers who are members of the International Jewish Congress, which, among other things, has sponsored the American Civil War, the Russian Revolution, and just about every other ugly, nasty, war for profit in the past 200 years. Did you know that of the 300 commissars put in place as the Russian government following the so-called revolution in 1917, 280 of them were fake Jews from New York, representing Chase Manhattan, Citibank, J.P. Morgan, the New York Bank of Mellon, etc.? Did you know that they are trying to pull the same kind of crap here in America and China at the same time? Did you ever wonder what the family of viruses called SARS is called SARS virus in the first place? SARS stands for specific absorption rate, their effect on electromagnetic energy in the brain. These are electronic bugs. Your DNA is designed as an antenna. It's meant to connect you to your ultimate source. Instead, it is used to flood your internal dialogue with nonsense and fear and egotism and self-loathing. You are being programmed by these monsters to seek your own destruction. You can override their messaging and you can physically derail their nanobots, but how likely are you to take action against a threat, if you don't know that it exists? Now that you have a clear view of what has gone on in the past, you are better able to understand what is going on now. And what has to be done. We are the actual, factual possessors and owners of all the assets. Time to move our deposits. And certain parts of our anatomy. Get started filling out and recording the paperwork based on Anna's article number 928 at www.theamericanstatesassembly.net/correct-your-status. The link is in the video description box. Thank you. Please consider making a small donation to help support Anna and the Living Law Firm, by visiting theamericanstatesassembly.net, scroll to the bottom and click on the Donate Now button. Thank you.